What can we expect from Disney in 2021?
And has digital TV delivered on its 20-year promise?
Vertical Hold is proudly brought to you by Aussie Broadband, changing the game with their award-winning network and Australian-based support.
Hi there. Welcome to Vertical Hold Behind the Tech News, the weekly podcast where we catch up with Australia's leading technology journalists to get the stories behind the tech news of the week. I'm Alex Kidman, and I'm joined as usual by Adam Turner, a man who's excited to be crashing the Nakatomi Corporation office Christmas party this year. Adam, do you think it's going to go off?
Oh yeah, I'm catching up with my friends Tony and Marco and Carl and Franco. I reckon the night's going to end with a bang.
Well, look, enjoy it. I go for a quieter kind of Christmas Eve. Just have a few close friends around, Rizzo, Gonzo, Mr. Scrooge. But you do you. And that laugh you can hear in the background is because we're also welcoming back to the virtual Vertical Hold studios Steve Molk from TV Blackbox. Steve, are you going to make it to the Nakatomi Corporation office or hang with Kermit and Rizzo?
Come out to the coast, have a few laughs. Of course I'm going to the party.
Well, speaking of parties, this year marks the 20th anniversary of digital TV launching in Australia, and the three of us remember it well. We were wearing onions on our belts, as was the style at the time. And meanwhile, Disney's planning for a huge 2021, unveiling a ton of new shows, a new arm of Disney Plus, a whole very streaming-centric approach. And we're going to get into that shortly. Also, make sure you hang around until the end of the show because we're still running our listener survey. There are still some sweet prizes to be won. Before we look at where digital TV came from and where it's gone, Disney has made some really big moves in the last week. And Steve, I know you were all over this story. So what's coming next year and in the next few years?
So much stuff. Guys, it's going to be amazing. I mean, we had the Disney Investor Day just recently. And look, we're used to, in the world of particularly Apple and Steve Jobs, has prepared us for, the one more thing just before you go. I just want to tell you about this thing. Congratulations to Bob Iger and the Disney team, because they just didn't even stop. They just went, here are all of the things we're going to give you. And it was stuff like 10 new Star Wars series, 10 new Marvel series, 15 live action Disney films, Disney animation and Pixar series, their live action series, and 15 live action animation and Pixar features. And that is in the next 18 months. Oh my God.
That is a shed load of content. Is that overkill? I mean, I know Disney's got deep pockets, but you kind of, you don't want to shoot all your guns. I can't even remember what the metaphor is that I'm looking for. You don't want to play all your cards at once. When you're up against, people with deep pockets like Apple, like Netflix, are they going on too hard, too fast, do you think?
Look, you've got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them, right? I think it's a bold plan from
bold
Disney.
Strategy, Cotton.
Yeah, that's right. The important thing is that it allows them to, as they need to, delay some of them. If they need to go, that might hold back. But what it does is set a really clear plan in place for fans and, importantly, subscribers of Disney Plus to know that this is what is coming down the pipe on top of what already exists there. Oh, and by the way, they're bringing a whole other inclusion into Disney Plus called Star, which will bring a bunch of their FX content and Hulu content into Disney Plus, almost doubling the library.
It's a really, really interesting play from Disney. But look, I'll say this. I'm someone who was subscribed to Disney Plus for the full year when they launched because I've got a family full of Disney fanatics, and we figured, they're promising a whole bunch of Marvel series, and they'd only just launched Mandalorian. It feels like it was a lifetime ago, but they'd only just launched that first season of Mandalorian at that point.
Yeah.
And I've got to be honest, 2020, I don't feel Disney Plus was great value. Am I wrong?
Yes. Absolutely wrong.
Thanks for joining us, Alex.
Look, to be frank, if you have small little people they would have loved all of the Disney, Pixar, and animated and kids content that's on there. 100%. If you have someone who's young at heart and loves them, they will have enjoyed that. If you have Star Wars nerds in the house, as you pointed out, all of the Star Wars films plus The Mandalorian, which I've got to say, a hell of a launch title. That has proven to be the breakout series on streaming for me in the last 12 months. Plus, you've got all of the Marvel content. Plus, you had all but 2 seasons of The Simpsons. And with the misstep, let's be fair, of dropping the earlier episodes in at the wrong screen ratio and then them saying, we will fix it, and they did, shows that they really listen to the people who are subscribing. But there's a ton of stuff there that make it, certainly at the time, a worthwhile addition for that cheaper fixed price point of $8.99 a month or $89.99 for the year.
See, my counterpoint to that, and the reason why I think it wasn't great value, you're not wrong. The content is there, but a lot of that is existing stuff. I'm a big Star Wars fan. I've got those movies. So
Yes.
Mandalorian was the only new thing. For me, the highlights for Disney Plus over the last year basically amounted to Mandalorian and Hamilton. Hamilton was a big get for them.
Yes.
And I didn't mind the Muppet series they had, and I am annoyed that their Investor Day didn't really talk more Muppets, but that's just me. But that's basically 2 things over the span of the year. That new content story, I think, is so important for streaming. And obviously,
Yes.
the Investor Day talks to what they're going to do. But they sort of already talked all this stuff up. I mean, we were going to get WandaVision this year. That's happening next year. We were going to get Loki. That's happening next year. How much trust should I put in Disney as a result of what they did in 2020?
Look, heaps. I think the fact that they, and let's be fair, a lot of the stuff that they were dropping did also get affected by the coronavirus, and they added content, in fact, because if you look at their release schedule for the cinema, as a great example, Soul, their annual Boxing Day in Australia, animated Pixar release, isn't going to the cinema. It's landing on Disney Plus straight away. And that's a huge change for us because normally we chuff off to the cinema to go and see it. So that'll be a huge boon to us. Hamilton got moved forward. It wasn't meant to land in cinemas until next year. And they saw the opportunity, fast tracked some of the final production to get it into Disney Plus this year. And I acknowledge absolutely that unless you're a National Geographic fan or you're into The Simpsons or Star Wars or Marvel or, Disney Pixar films, there might not have been a whole bunch for you. However, like you said, absolutely, this big projection of here's what's coming, 30, 50, a lot, 50 odd new series and films coming down the pipe to Disney Plus intentionally, plus Star, plus those things, make it a far more competitive library when you have to stack it up in Australia compared to things like maybe Stan or Netflix. That said, they exclusively have all of that content. You don't get it anywhere else. So it's a worthwhile recognition. We can trust Disney because they did their best and everybody got affected by the coronavirus, including all of those production houses. So to see that stuff coming down the pipe, I mean, I knew that we were getting Star Wars The Bad Batch. For example, they had announced that that was coming. But to announce an Ahsoka series, to announce Obi-Wan Kenobi, which we kind of knew, but then to hear that Hayden Christensen is going to play Darth Vader in a, basically, but around the Rogue Squadron time of Star Wars. What a brilliant idea. I cannot wait to see that.
2 words, Jar Jar.
Yeah, look, and that may well be a thing, and perhaps we see the end of Jar Jar, given that
Bad
we
Batch
don't see
were
Jar
the
Jar.
Jar Jar of Clone Wars. Bad Batch were terrible. I now understand why they had those terrible Bad Batch episodes in the final season of Clone Wars. They were such a cliche. It felt like the CIA team out of Hudson Hawk, except they were taking themselves seriously. I'm surprised the big guy wasn't called Butterfinger. But
What
now
a
I
cynic
get it.
you are, seriously.
But I get it now because they just want to spin off this show. But going back to when we first talked about Disney when it first came out, one of its weaknesses was that it was so family friendly, and we thought that that might hurt its long-term appeal. Is that where Stars come in? And do you think Stars was always part of the roadmap?
Look, I suspect given that Star Plus was already a thing in Latin America, that was essentially Disney kind of saying, well, here we've got this thing, we're using this as an asset, we're sharing that there, and it will continue as essentially an add-on feature in that market with them spending the megabucks and buying Lucasfilm and buying the whole Fox television and 20th Century Fox catalog. it meant that they have to take a responsibility to their shareholders around how do we deliver that content and take the best value out of it. So if you set aside all of the new stuff around Star Wars and Marvel and just lean into Star, I mean, for the fact that FX, which is a premium, nearly premium cable channel in the US, and it and Hulu are the home of The Handmaid's Tale and a whole bunch of other content, and that's going to come to Star inside Disney Plus, is a phenomenal idea.
Does this mean I can watch Archer on Disney because that's an FX show?
I would say eventually, yes, because they're going to adult control Star. It will appear as a tile within the Disney Plus suite. So while
It
it's
depends
still,
if Adam can work out the password his wife set.
yeah,
But
that's right.
I need my Krieger fix, though. I need my Krieger fix. I love that show
Well,
so
you
much.
find your opportunity.
Oh,
Look,
Piggly.
honestly, there's too much to get excited about.
Steve, you were talking there about In Time,
Mm.
because some of these shows that you're talking about and some of the stuff on FX, it's on other services
Yes.
in Australia. Are we talking here, do we know, about a Disney-esque, right, we'll bring it back under our fold and nobody else will have it again kind of story? Or are we talking a BritBox where an awful lot of the content is sort of, yeah, but everyone else has already got it?
In multiple places. Look, I would suspect Disney haven't said directly, though. Given the track record they have, look at what they did with the Marvel films. They put Stan on notice and said we're taking them back, and they did. Gone. The only place to find them is Disney Plus. I would expect that you would see existing deals play out because it's just not worth the money to pay them out. So you will still see the new series of The Handmaid's Tale appear here in Australia on SBS. However, very quickly you will see the older series appear as sort of back catalogue stuff in Star on Disney Plus, and then that new series appear pretty quickly in a streaming context.
We talked earlier about it's basically direct to streaming. In the old days, direct to VHS meant something was terrible, but now we have this idea of direct to streaming. What kind of impact do you think that'll have? And is this just a COVID thing? And when I say just a COVID thing, COVID's going to drag on for a couple of years in at least some parts of the world, including the US. But is this a blip and then things will change back to the way it was? Or do you think this is going to sort of forever change the way content is distributed and comes to cinema?
Oh, I wouldn't be holding on to your Hoyts or cinema shares too tightly. That's for sure. I mean, we saw, for example, Disney Plus. Let's call it trial. The idea of selling premium access to Mulan, their live action movie, a remake of their animated film. What did it cost? $35 or something to be able to get access to it to view it. Now, we didn't spend the cash, and it was just last week or the week before that Disney Plus went, here, everybody can access it. That was the nature of the deal. You get a preemptive view on it. You can get to see it and pay the cash, or you can just wait and it'll land here for everybody to see. I think that has to send a very clear message to the cinemas that maybe your time is nearly done. And while they are still holding on to, their ability to launch stuff, we know that Wonder Woman 1984 is launching in the cinemas here in Australia, even though Warner Brothers have announced a whole raft of content is going directly to HBO Max in the States. I think we talked about that last time. That it can't last. It's far cheaper for studios to have direct streaming deals either through their own services or with a partner like Disney Plus or a Netflix, and go, here, we've made this great thing, and now we've sold it to you for the agreed amount, and here it is. The catch is, of course, that for your big blockbusters that make their $100-200 million or whatever it is opening weekend, that is a tough teat to wean the studios off.
And do you think people still want that viewing experience? So are people prepared to forego the cinema and only ever watch these big blockbuster movies on whatever home theatre system they've got?
Well, that's the challenge, isn't it? Big, high quality TV systems and audio systems have become far cheaper now than they were even 5 years ago, right? You guys know this. You talk about it professionally and write about it. So to that end, you can buy a brand new OLED, something special, 75-inch, whatever, and put it on your thing or hang it on your wall and have a great sound bar and a good, even wireless Dolby stereo surround system and sit on your own couch and not have to worry about paying $20 for a stupid amount of small popcorn and, blah, 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 and enjoy the whole experience at home. That theatre versus the in-home thing, I think, is increasingly becoming a myth that is being perpetuated by the studios that want you to pay the big bucks to go to a cinema.
So, I mean, getting back to Disney Plus and this whole huge raft of things, isn't the strategy there sort of with those big blockbuster movies, with how all that plays out? Isn't the strategy there kind of, look, we keep having these new things? I mean, it's sort of my problem with Disney Plus this year. I didn't feel as though there was a new thing on Disney Plus every month that really engaged me in the same way that, for example, I think Netflix managed that a little better. Doesn't that mean in the next couple of years, in theory, there's a new Star Wars or there's a new Marvel or there's a new something, if they're going to fit them all in just about every week?
It's going to be amazing. Like, what a time to be alive, honestly. To hear that Taika Waititi has a whole new Star Wars feature film that he gets to create a world around. To know that there is Zac Efron starring in a Three Men and a Baby reboot. And to lean into the fact that we're getting phase 4 of the Avengers franchise rolling out, and it includes the TV series, streaming series, as much as their films. How great is that?
So when do we get a next Jessica Jones series?
Gosh, well, that would be interesting because you're right. Disney have got the rights for that back from Netflix, and it wouldn't surprise me to see, that whole foursome that got series made for them on Netflix start to appear in their own universes within the Disney Marvel universe.
So, Steve, 20 years ago, we're all sitting around looking at this fancy new thing called digital television.
Yes.
It didn't have any of that ghosting and fuzz and all those wonderful things that made television such an interesting thing to watch. Has it actually delivered on its promises over the last 20 years?
Staring at our TIAC set-top boxes with these funny remotes where the buttons did stuff. Look, that's a big question. Has it done what we look? I don't know if it's done what we expected or if it's delivered on its promises, because I think its promises were reasonably bland. I don't think the networks really knew what digital multi-channeling could do for them. And I would argue that they still don't.
Yeah.
They're really only starting to get their head around what that brings them as an opportunity. And it has been a rare event, usually only the Olympics, to be frank, that has seen multi-channel broadcasting of the same event to allow fans or viewers to engage an event in different ways.
Yeah, it took them about 10 years to start doing that. I wrote a piece for The Age that'll run over summer, and I was looking back, trying to figure out the first time that there was that someone did that multi-channel sport. And my theory is that it was SBS with the Ashes and the Tour de France in 2009, I want to say. And they actually had one on one channel and one on the other, so you could watch either live. And I think that was the first time I'd seen a network take two major sporting events and run them back side by side on multi-channel. But they just didn't, and that took them 10 years to get to that point.
And this is the challenge, right? And I understand why it took so long to wind us out of analog broadcasting, and that you couldn't expect people to just, update their technology and whatever. But because it took ages, the networks were a little bit gun shy about talking about what was on their multi-channels, because not everybody got to see it and people complained about it. And when you told them all they had to do was go and buy a set-top box, it was like you had just told them to fly to the moon.
But if you went and bought a set-top box, you got a shed load of Gilligan's Island repeats is what you got on the extra channels.
Well, for some of them, you also had to buy a new antenna as well, right?
See, I think it was actually a fair bit more cynical than that. I actually think digital TV has been a bit of a missed opportunity for Australia.
And we've stepped through it.
Yeah, sort of. But I think at the time, there was an opportunity where they could have said, right, digital TV, yeah, your existing channels can do what they do. Let's have some new players in this market. Let's have some competition. Let's not just hand over the additional spectrum and they'll play around with maybe HD, maybe not HD, maybe the odd sporting event here or there. But otherwise, yeah, look, everyone's seen MASH 47 million times, right?
Well, and people still claim it as their favourite TV show, so God bless
Oh,
them and
sure.
good luck to
And
them.
for the MASH fans out there, that's fine. Like what you like. But you know what I
Yeah.
mean. I don't think they pushed digital as far as some others might have if the opportunity was there.
Yes, oh no, I completely agree. And look, here we are entering 2021, and internet streaming has so transformed the way we watch television that that ship sailed. Right, it doesn't matter
Hmm.
what you try and do. You may have multi channels. I mean, we've seen in the past two Olympics, instead of them taking over multiple channels, their priority has been apps or come to our website and watch it all there. Um, which has made some people very frustrated and others quite happy to be able to watch their niche sport at any time to do all of the things. Um, I think there's capacity for it to have done better. The challenge is that, and look, can I be really frank? The networks are in I'll say in a golden position where they no longer pay what were, to be fair, reasonably excessive license fees to the government. They've long since been waived. So they get their spectrum for free. The government would love to get that spectrum back off them and sell it. That's the core of what's happening here.
Yeah,
It
to
really
Telstra for
is.
top dollar.
Oh, mate, all of the telcos would line up for it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It
All
would
three.
it would start a bargaining war, like a bidding war, right? They'd be into it. It's only the lobbyists that keep it in the hands of 7, 9, and 10, and then by extension, SBS and ABC. However, the smarter free to air networks more than saw the writing on the wall and have established themselves effectively a transformation opportunity. You know, Stan is deep in Nine's product suite and connected to who they are now. That's where you'll have to go to see the rugby, to see some of the big tennis matches next year, with admittedly an add-on price, but you go to Stan to see that. The ABC's iView is almost without comparison as far as content library and delivery mechanism, and that's the government broadcaster. So, at what point? Look, I'd expect in my lifetime, do we see the government announce that they are switching off digital terrestrial broadcasting because everything is on the internet?
They're already implying that it's coming. If you look at the report, I think, or the beginnings of a report that the communications minister talked about, they're already talking
Ugh,
about scaling
that
back
joke.
on multi-channel. Yeah, don't even start me. They're already talking about scaling back on multi-channels because they want to use that spectrum for other things. And if you look at other countries like South Korea, which, did the whole do it once and do it right when it comes to
Yep.
broadband,
Yeah.
more people in South Korea watch live free-to-air television over the internet than they do over terrestrial airwaves. Because I was there a few years ago, and the guy was quite jealous when I told him how many people still watch our terrestrial broadcasts. And then I told him that we had a whole lot of multi-channels and filled them with I Dream of Jeannie. He thought I was joking because
Yeah.
they have one channel which they show in HD and Ultra HD. They don't.
Mm.
They stuck with quality rather than quantity. So we haven't gone down that path, but I think we will follow them in that eventually it'll be like, I don't want to muck around with an aerial on the roof where the broadband coming into my house is good enough and the access is easy enough that I can just treat the internet like a channel and watch Channel 9 that way.
A
Are you
friend of
suggesting
mine.
Barbara Eden isn't quality? We may have to step outside, sir.
Larry Hagman. Look, a friend of mine did some renovations in his place, and that meant shifting everything and repainting and all of the stuff. And they noticed, just the other month, 6 months after those renovations were complete, that they hadn't plugged their television back into the antenna socket.
Hmm.
It took him 6 months to realize that, and he's my age, and he has two teenage kids. So our dependency on the terrestrial broadcast signal is waning significantly, and in fact, we've seen again the coronavirus in 2020 have a lot to answer for. Not least of which is the networks finally realizing that delivering their content, building their libraries, and allowing us to live stream their channels, sticking with that kind of linear broadcast model allowing us to live stream those things to our big screen televisions is actually more helpful than them doing much else.
I have a concern with all of this, though. And look, I'll say I don't watch a lot of commercial TV. I don't watch a lot of broadcast TV at all.
You're not
I
missing much.
do a lot of catch up, a lot of ABC iView, a lot of SBS. Love those apps myself. But one of the beauties of terrestrial TV is all you need is a TV. I mean, we've never even had a TV license like they have in the UK.
Yeah,
You just need a TV. It's there. It's broadcast, and not across the entire nation. There are bits of the desert where there's obviously no signal, but where people live, they can access not only an entertainment service but a news service, for example.
sure.
Once you shift that all to the internet, everyone's got to pay for that. Is this not just pay TV by stealth in a way?
Oh, look, yes and no. The challenge is that didn't and look, forgive me, I'm speaking out of turn. Didn't the UN include internet access as one of like the basic human rights for children these days?
I believe there's something to that effect in play, but that doesn't mean it's free. I mean,
Sure,
it's not universal yet. I wonder though if
but
there isn't
aspirationally, right?
yeah. Well, exactly. I'll say democratic ideal in saying, look, here's a minimum level that everyone will get, which will enable things like news access. Because let's face it, even though it feels like it was years and years ago, at the start of this year, we had massive bushfires raging through the country,
Sure,
and the ABC, especially, doing some amazing work with that, both in local
always do.
radio but also TV. If all that's on the internet, if you can't access that in other ways, that's got some serious problems.
It does, and look, this is where I think in an emergency situation, like you've pointed out,
Hmm.
that's where ABC Local Radio comes into its own, right? That is and part of their charter to be delivering that emergency broadcast information to keeping people up to date. That's vital because you can run a radio in your car. Well, they're still there for the moment, but you can run a radio on batteries, right? We can't run necessarily, if the 5G tower hasn't given us cancer already, if it gets attacked by the fire, then we're sunk.
5G
Well,
does not give you cancer. Steve Molk does not speak on behalf of Vertical Molk.
It gives you COVID. Everybody knows that.
Oh, so I've confused the two. C word.
Quiet, Aunt
Sorry.
Lucy.
But you follow my meaning, right? Like if we acknowledge, I just not even re-upped. I didn't re-sign. I bought, um, got rid of an old service and got a new phone service in my telco data family plan deal, and with that came 50 gig of data a month. And they said, "Oh, look, we noticed that this will put all of your other services up to 50 gig." My family now has 250 gigabytes of data for our mobile devices to churn through in a month, and we weren't using 20.
That's a lot
A
of
lot of Linux
Mandalorian.
distributions.
But
Yes.
this is the catch, right? That stuff, independent of the glorious NBN
Hmm.
precious fiber optic cable that I want to have connected to my house, the ability to access high speed internet is becoming more and more available to me on my handset. So while ABC Local Radio does that, if I can then get onto ABC broadcast, linear broadcast, or emergency broadcast television on my phone, that's more help to me there than it is on my big screen television in an emergency.
Again, at a paid level, though, I think it does come back to that. And I'm not speaking for myself because, like you, I've probably got more data on my phone than I know what to do with. I worry about the less fortunate in our society and the broader
I
effect that
acknowledge.
may have.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and that I think honestly that becomes ideally some legislation with foresight that acknowledges that
Hmm.
we need to make agree to some kind of basic level of connection and data allowance so that every person can get access to it for, if not free, super very cheap. And yeah, you can
Thank,
up
good,
it and get it more expensive, but yes.
thank goodness we have politicians with foresight in this
Oh
country.
gosh, can we find some of them? I asked Santa for one. You know what he did?
Laughed.
Yeah.
He's a jolly old fat
Gave you a
man.
lump of coal, just like our existing politicians.
And he said, "Don't be afraid of this."
Yes. So we were talking about sport earlier. Now, sport is kind of the golden goose that saves television. It has been in this country for
Mm.
decades. And another thing that COVID's done is made it much harder for the AFL or the NRL to turn around and try and strike a multi-year
Oh,
billion-dollar deal. Now, once they can't screw 7 or 9 for $1 billion,
mm.
alternatives like going direct and starting the AFL streaming service to Australians becomes more viable. I know they already do that if you're overseas, but how far away do you think that is where I'll sit down and watch the footy on the AFL app because it's not on 7 or 9 anymore?
Yeah, look, the anti-siphoning list has a lot to answer for, and the other side of the free-to-air commercial networks getting their spectrum for free while still demanding that the government legislate that certain sporting programs, and that's all that's on that list, must remain on free-to-air television is bullshit. You cannot have your cake and eat it too. That is outrageous. Now, sure, that would mean, understandably, that Foxtel would want to swoop in and snaffle it all up because they're the bits they're missing. You can watch every game of AFL on Foxtel except the grand final live. And if you're a serious fan, you're watching it on KO or you're watching it on Foxtel if you've got a lot of money or whatever. The difficulty, I think, as a great example, the AFL launching their own app and delivering it as a premium subscription here. I want to just watch it that way because, we sell a Friday night game and a Sunday night game and a Monday night game, and it's on 7, 9, and 10 respectively, a la the NFL in the States, is just the size of the audience and how much it would cost to do that. I did some very basic math with a friend of mine who used to, unfortunately, one of the redundancies this year, used to work for Fox Sports. And we basically worked out that a year-long subscription would be prohibitive, given that in Australia there's air quotes only 26 million people here, and not all of them are going to sign up for an AFL subscription. A lot would, sure, but not. You wouldn't see more than 5 million people do it, right? And even if you did see 5 million people do it for, let's be conservative, $100 a season, and it might need to be more or less than that, that's only $500 million. And like you said, when the last deal was $1 billion, the AFL are never seeing $1 billion deal again. But amortized over 5 years, 500 million starts to get pretty attractive, but someone has to invest a butt ton of money. And guess what the AFL doesn't have right now? A butt ton of money.
Well, I mean, isn't the story there? And certainly, I know this is the case in the States for the NFL and NBA and so on. That what they're really relying on is those TV networks doing the production for them. That's what they'd have to invest. Apart from whatever you're going to pay your players and so on. And everyone knows I'm talking in the abstract here because it's sports, but it's that TV production. Because I would have thought, Adam, if you're spending $100 plus on your AFL sub, you're not going to want something that looks like it was shot on someone's 8mm camera being delivered in a tiny, postage stamp size window.
No, not really what you look for when you're watching the football.
And you'd want it in 4K, right? You'd want to be able to say, I pay, and even if I go to $150 a year and I get it in 4K or $100 for HD or however they set it up.
I reckon it'd be more. I think if you were going to run those kinds of things, it'd be way more.
And that's the challenge. That's the challenge that the AFL face, let alone the initial upfront costs that have to do to make it be a thing. Because you're right, either they spend the money and become their own full-time production house in making the broadcast, or they have a broadcast partner that makes it for them for a reasonable fee so that they can then just go on. I mean, having their own media unit is a start, but stretching that media unit into making and owning and delivering the broadcast for whoever. I mean, there's still the capacity that should they do that they do sell the Friday night game, the Saturday game, the Sunday game, the Monday game, and just put it up for bids. That, I think, is more possible than a locked away year-long deal with a single broadcaster.
Well, that just about wraps up another episode of Vertical Hold. Thanks to Steve for once again making time for the show for us.
This is the way.
And Steve, once again, it's your moment to tell the world about where they can find your work, yourself on social media, and I think you're one of the few people who's getting a second choice, a reconsidered vote for the best biscuit of 2020.
Great. Well, I'm at Steve Molk on anywhere that might interest you when it comes to social media. I'm a part of tvblackbox.com.au. I'm the viewers advocate there and editor, co-editor with Kevin and with Rob. We write a whole bunch of stuff about the Australian TV landscape. And let me tell you, over Christmas, there's not heaps going on. But there is stuff happening in the States. So we do still update that. But both our podcasts, the TV Blackbox podcast and the TV Bingebox podcast, are having a summer break. Though you can, and you might find it entertaining to download them and listen to the latest season, just as you relax by the pool and do all of those sorts of things. New favourite biscuit, chocolate-dipped Oreo.
Chocolate dip.
Oh, that's the second
Oreo.
vote we've had for the Oreo so far.
I don't know about chocolate dip. Isn't that literally double dipping?
Mate, in the best possible way. In fact, you can go to Aldi and get their knockoff version, or if you buy the original Oreo version, it's Oreos dipped and like completely encapsulated in Cadbury chocolate. Oh my God.
So while we ponder whether or not there is in fact a biscuit dipping podcast we should be producing, you can catch up with us online at Vertical Hold AU on Twitter, at verticalhold.com.au on the web or via the Vertical Hold Facebook page.
And next week will be the last episode for the year. We're going to take 2 weeks off over summer, but make sure you tune in next week because we have a very special guest. And also, don't forget that we are running an amazing listener survey with some great prizes from Belkin to help make Vertical Hold bigger and better in 2021. The survey is running until the end of the year. The prizes will be shipped to anywhere in Australia. So it doesn't matter how long you've been listening. It doesn't matter if you don't listen every week. We'd love to hear from you. And the address to go to is verticalhold.com.au/survey. Vertical Hold is proudly brought to you by Aussie Broadband, changing the game with their award-winning network and Australian-based support.
Asterisk, people who are on the show can't apply, apparently ripped off.
Yes. We'd have no Palm Pilot gear to give away. Sorry, we checked.
But we did bribe Steve with some fake Oreos and chocolate earlier, so he's still pretty sweet.